So a question that's very frequently asked by the whole community is War Tycoon actually dying? As of the time I'm recording this video, the game is on 12,000 players, which is just the average that the game normally hits. And in this video, guys, I will be going over 10 core issues which this game currently has, and I'll be going over how well they're actually dealing with their problems and how well they're actually being controlled. Because every other game will always have some issues, and the question is War Tycoon actually dealing with them pretty well? And in the end of this video, I'll also be taking a look at the Rollimon's website, which basically covers how well War Tycoon is currently doing in terms of their player count. So we're going to be comparing the players in 2025 compared to 2024. So the first major issue which War Tycoon currently has is the hacker situation, which is incredibly annoying, to be honest. Like, there are two types of hacks which I frequently see. One of them is being able to literally steal parts and basically take them back to your base. So there is sometimes a time of day where you literally get all of your parts robbed by hackers, and then another hack which I frequently see is going to be RPG scripters, which are literally flying around and infinitely shooting at you with the RPG, which can get really annoying. And reporting these people feels pretty much useless a lot of the time, because even if you get somebody banned, they can just get on another account and just do the same thing over and over again. So really banning them does not make too much difference. I still encourage you guys to report hackers. However, I do believe War Tycoon does need a proper anti-cheat, and I believe the reason why the anti-cheat is not that good in War Tycoon as well is because it's not very well done in Roblox as a platform either. Roblox seriously needs to pull in some weight if they actually want other games to also get rid of this hacker situation. Now, the next issue which I also do see going on right now is how buggy this game can be from update to update. Of course, every game is bound to be having a lot of bugs. However, I did notice that there are a lot of them which they simply kind of fail to fix after even months of time. Like, for example, a bug that has been reported for quite a while now is how this pond literally drowns you, and there was nothing that was really done about it. Another bug which I also consistently see is how if you fix the bridge, you might just end up falling in the water right afterward. And this has been a bug ever since the brand new map was added. It still is waiting to be fixed, which is really interesting. Something does tell me that they're really struggling with bugs very specifically for some parts of the map. However, I do have to give them some credit, because every single update they are still working on bug fixes and constantly putting a lot of them in the update log, so I very much appreciate it. I just feel like there are some very important bugs which still need some fixing. Now, the next thing which is constantly talked about is the limiteds and the limited quantity limiteds. Yeah, it's as if it couldn't get any worse. I really do not like the fact that they are making these limited quantity, and the reason why is because that's basically like installing the fear of missing out. I do understand actually selling normal limiteds monthly. I don't have a problem with that, because every game needs to earn their money in their own way. However, I feel like they have been leaning just a little bit too much into this feature over the recent half a year. I don't have a problem with these premiums, because a lot of them are well balanced. They're not very OP. The only ones which I would really point a finger at is gonna be the Seahawk and maybe the Super and the Apache Longbow. All the other limiteds, to me, in my book, are actually pretty well done. Like, if I had to change one thing about how the limited system works, I would probably just remove the maximum quantity that you could sell. But then again, I'm not a dev, I don't know how much this actually supports them. It's possible that in the end, these limiteds are allowing us to get so many frequent updates, because I did notice that when they started selling more of these, we are getting weekly updates pretty much consistently for the last few months. So maybe in the end, these are actually helping out the devs quite a lot and actually allowing us to receive content very consistently. Now, the next issue which people also talk about is pay to win, and that's actually a very good one to go over. So the way in which I'm going to be defining is this game pay to win as a whole is I'm going to be covering every single section of the Tycoon and going over all the different vehicle types to see is any of them actually primarily pay to win. So first, heading into the planes, we have two planes which could be considered very pay to win, that being the F-35 Lightning and the F-117 and Seahawk. However, all of these planes do have some really good contenders, like the SC-57, which is basically an F-35 but a little bit worse, and F-22 Raptor that's much better than the F-35 at a certain role, while we do also have the V-22 Osprey, which is also free to play. That's basically the best vehicle in the game right now, in my opinion. So to be honest, the planes are definitely not paid to win. However, if we move into the helicopters, the gap can definitely be noticed in terms of paid content and free content, because we have the Super Hind and the Apache Longbow, which are both leading the primary, premium, limiteds, which are pay to win over here. The Mi-28 is not very good. However, the difference between the Longbow and Super Hind and then moving into something like the Mangusta, Raider X, Viper, these are not very good compared to their premium alternatives. So in terms of helicopters, there's definitely some pay to win issues going on over here. And now moving into the ground vehicles, the paid options are honestly way worse than their free-to-play options. Like right now, the ground vehicles are heavily dominated by the Patriot, BTR-80 Cliver, the VCAC Mephisto, the Levat. However, people don't really use the Boxer CRV and the JLTV, so the ground vehicles are definitely not pay to win. Now the tanks on the other side are basically the same thing as the ground vehicles. The Abrams X is a very strong tank, however the Abrams X has a certain role in the meta, and that's going to be the range combat, where other tanks could be much better at range, such as the K9, Fender. You do also have tanks which have amazing close range packages, great anti-air tanks. In general, the Abrams X is definitely not very pay to win right now, because you have so much better alternatives that are basically on par with the Abrams X. Now moving into the ships have not been pay to win for a very long time, because for over half a year the USS Independence was actually better than the Zumwalt. However, after the recent buff, we currently have the USS Zumwalt, which is extremely strong now. It's by far the strongest ship in the game, and the Independence X is closely tied behind it. However, the USS Independence, the standard version, is not very good compared to them too. So the ships are by far pretty pay to win. Anyway, lastly, moving into the hovercrafts, this is a very obvious one. This was one of the most problematic vehicles in War Tycoon. That's the Overlord. This section is also pay to win by far. So overall, we have went over 3 vehicle types which are not pay to win, but also 3 vehicle types which are pay to win. So right now, I would say this game is nicely balanced, because some things are extremely good for free-to-play players, while others are great for pay to win players. So it's basically 50-50. Now the next issue which this game always struggled with is the community. I'm gonna be fully honest with you guys, but the faction drama and how the community deals with problems in this game is extremely terrible, and to be honest, I don't think the community in this game is good. Like, even the suggestion channels a lot of the time are not even used correctly. They're more actually used as a place for people to cry rather than to actually say what they want to have added in the game. Like, I feel like this community is just so split in half. Some people are really reasonable, while others are just extremely toxic, and they in general do not have a very good impact on other people. Now moving into another point which is constantly talked about, and that's the spawn killing issue in this game. What spawn killing essentially means is killing the person and not letting them leave their base. However, in War Tycoon terms, it goes over being inside their base and killing them from right inside of it. However, that's not really how I would define spawn killing. To me, it's really just trying to stop the person from leaving their base and not really letting them do anything. And I feel like that's a major issue in War Tycoon right now, because what players essentially do is just making others leave the game and not want to play it. This has been an issue in this game for over 3 years now. People just constantly raid incorrectly. The way in which you're supposed to raid in this game is destroy power boxes. However, that's just extremely boring and bland in my opinion, and that's the reason why people resort to spawn killing. But also another issue that goes with that is how toxic the community is. So an issue is kind of a bit of both. It's the community, but also how terrible the raiding system currently is in this game, and how easy it is to actually attack somebody, and their bases barely have any defense except for the serum. I feel like the serum is so outdated. Now the next issue which we will constantly talk about is the brand new map, and what the developers essentially advertise this new map as being is just a much better one compared to the previous one in terms of both performance and looks. In my opinion, the performance issues can definitely be seen quite a bit. However, my issue with this brand new map is that there are just so many rocks which are here for absolutely no reason that basically ruin the gameplay of tank players. This map is supposed to give the tank players cover. I believe that was the main intent of it. However, the issue being is that these rocks basically ruin it for the people that actually want to be using movement as tank players. The air vehicles don't really have any obstacles around, where the tank players have pretty much the worst scenario to always be in. Another issue which I also see with this brand new map is how many bugs it has which are still unresolved. A lot of them have been reported a really long time ago, and I'm still kind of confused why a lot of them haven't been fixed. Now another issue which is constantly talked about is the power creep problem in this game, or really any game. All games are always going to be impacted by it, but how severe is it in War Tycoon? I do believe it is at a pretty severe state right now. However, in the recent month, what War Tycoon basically basically started doing is adding less meta vehicles. A perfect example of that is a premium limited, which is the SU-47 Berkut. The player has gotten so used to getting overpowered vehicles after spending their money on it that now when a vehicle isn't that good, they all basically started complaining about it. Okay, I don't know how I just died there, but ignoring that, so it's almost like they enjoy the power creep problem in this game, or maybe it's just how the community is built overall in most video games. In general, I do believe the game is slowly starting to tackle the power creep problem, because a lot of our vehicles which have recently been added are not actually that game breaking, they're more of just something strong and nothing more than that. However, I do believe the best way to fix power creep issues in general is also going to be buffing a lot of vehicles which are still left behind. And that really moves us to the next point, balancing. This is something I really do not like in this game right now, and it's something I didn't like for quite a while now. There are so many vehicles which are being left behind, and we can primarily see this in the helicopter category with something like the Eurocopter, Invictus, KA-52, we have the Blackhawk, we have the Huey. There are so many vehicles which could be made unique in a specific way. Another perfect example of that is even the B-2 Bomber, which has been heavily nerfed, and now it's basically kind of useless. However, we also have other planes at the bottom which really do not serve much use in this meta. I'd love them to be buffed in some way, or perhaps even reworked. The perfect example of that is that they recently decided to buff the F4 Phantom. It's now actually reasonably okay. They also buffed a lot of other vehicles in the recent updates, so they are definitely tackling the balancing problem in this game. However, I do believe it's a little bit slow, and by the time all the balancing issues are dealt with, I believe it would even take a few years with the pace that we're currently going. And now moving to the last point, I do believe that the gun system in this game is extremely terrible for quite a few years. I believe it already does need a rework. However, what actually made this gun system even worse is the addition of the C4, which basically takes away all skill from actually having ground fights, and same with the grenade launcher. So you basically have instant win button weapons, which were not that much of a issue before. Of course, you did have the snipers, however, they definitely took a lot more skill to use than something like the grenade launcher. You guys are understanding the issue. I do believe the gun system overall needs a revamp in this game. And now lastly, let's take a look if this game was actually impacted by all the issues which I covered. So right here, if I head into daily, this is basically how War Tycoon is currently looking. So their peaks seem to be around 2024 and 2025 in around mid of this year or start of this year, I believe that is. However, now what essentially started happening is this game is having a little bit of a drop, and this major drop can be seen around September and October. However, I will not be counting this drop as very accurate information to actually say that this game is not doing very well right now, and the simple reason why is because every single September and October, the games are always on a huge decline in terms of player base. So their issues in this game are definitely evident. However, the overall player counts and how this game is doing as a whole is definitely not slowing down at all. And I could even make an argument that this coming December might even be the best time for War Tycoon in terms of their player counts and overall revenue. It's just my guess I'm going to be taking since Roblox is also doing so well as a platform, and these issues are overall not impacting this game very much in terms of player counts. Anyway guys, for the time being, that's going to be everything I have for you all in today's video. The game is definitely not dying, however it does have some major issues which definitely need fixing. So do let me know in the comment section down below what you actually dislike about this game the most. And yeah, thank you all so much for watching, and do let me know in the comment section down below if you'd like to see more detailed videos just like this.